Ethan Morales was a renowned and extraordinarily wealthy hotel tycoon, a strikingly handsome bachelor in his mid-30s who effortlessly made the covers of every top magazine. Desired by countless women in high society, they did everything in their power to catch Ethan's attention. Yet Ethan seemed oblivious to it all, with his sole focus on expanding his empire. Year after year, he grew his fortune, making him an even more alluring catch, though he appeared perfectly content with his solitary life and work. Ethan resided in an expansive penthouse in the heart of the city. His luxury apartment was perched high above the bustling streets, offering panoramic views through floor-to-ceiling windows. Each day, his elderly housekeeper ensured the place was immaculate, handling everything from laundry to exquisite meals, taking care of the daily needs of this high-powered businessman. After work, Ethan would settle into his favorite armchair by the enormous window, savoring a drink while watching the city lights come to life. This was his routine, but there was one secret he kept from everyone, even the press: his love for reading. It was books, he believed, that had shaped him into who he was. They had fueled his dreams and pushed him to imagine a life beyond the one he'd been born into. Ethan came from humble beginnings, growing up with two sisters and a younger brother in a family that struggled financially. But he had always had a love for adventure novels, and these books ignited in him a passion for travel. When he was just 14, he hitchhiked with his best friend to a nearby city, where they spent the night in a modest inn on the outskirts. It was this experience that sparked an idea. How remarkable it was that travelers could find a place to rest, no matter how far they wandered. That night, Ethan dreamed of creating his own hotels, places that would welcome adventurers of all kinds. From that moment, Ethan's imagination soared. He pictured hotels in the most unconventional locations: a massive tree, a mountain, even underground. He went further, envisioning hotels in space, where tourists might one day marvel at the stars from Mars. Fueled by these dreams, he asked his mother for a sketchbook, and he began drawing his ideas. That sketchbook became his treasured companion, hidden away in his desk drawer, only shown to his closest friends, who marveled at his boundless creativity. When he had the chance to present his ideas at a school event, Ethan seized the opportunity. His teachers and the principal were captivated by his vision and encouraged him to pursue a career in architecture and design. Filled with gratitude, Ethan worked tirelessly to prepare for university entrance exams. His family doubted that he could achieve such a grand dream or earn a scholarship, but Ethan was determined. When his friends came by with a soccer ball to invite him to play, he would simply shake his head, returning to his textbooks, knowing that hard work and resilience were his ticket to success. And indeed, he was right. Ethan was accepted into a top university's architecture program. His parents were stunned, but also incredibly proud of his achievement. Immersed in his studies, he pushed himself to excel in every class. It was during his time at university that he met Camilla, a tall, graceful young woman with golden hair and an almost ethereal beauty that left him mesmerized. To Ethan, she seemed like a vision from one of the novels he loved so much. Though Ethan's heart was captured by Camilla, the passion for his dreams remained strong, as he set his sights on building a world of hotels that would one day inspire countless travelers. Ethan Morales was completely captivated by Camilla. He spent his scholarship money on flowers, chocolates, and countless outings, taking her to the theater and cinema. Though Camilla accepted his affections, her interest seemed half-hearted. Coming from a very affluent family, she studied in the university's elite program, and Ethan, infatuated, allowed himself to get swept up in his feelings, even putting his studies aside. But to Camilla, his love was merely a game. After a short while, she grew tired of the attention and stopped returning his calls. She then began dating one of the most popular guys in their faculty, an arrogant but wealthy student who was admired by many. Heartbroken, Ethan resolved to make something of himself and prove his worth. One day, she'll realize what she lost, he vowed to his best friend, Mateo, who was also on a scholarship. Mateo nodded supportively, though he doubted it was possible. But Ethan's determination remained unshaken. He graduated with honors, and thanks to a strong recommendation from one of his favorite professors, he quickly landed a prestigious job with one of the top construction firms in the country. The company had extensive international collaborations, allowing Ethan to gain valuable experience, build contacts, and refine his skills. For the next 2 years, Ethan traveled extensively, absorbing all the knowledge he could. When his contract eventually ended, he felt prepared to pursue his own dreams and decided to start his own company. The beginning was challenging, and there were many times when he almost gave up. Yet the memory of Camilla, the woman who had doubted him, spurred him on. Ethan reminded himself of his promise to succeed, no matter the odds. His persistence paid off. His business began to gain traction, and with the support of new partners, he launched his first major project, a stunning glass hotel atop a skyscraper in the city center. From there, the projects grew bolder and more innovative. Soon he was building a ship-shaped hotel, a beachside hotel inspired by an octopus, and even a hostel located inside a decommissioned airplane. Many of these unique designs came straight from the sketchbook he had started in his youth, filling him with pride. His hard work was paying off, and the once overlooked boy from a modest family had become a highly respected entrepreneur. As his wealth and reputation grew, so did his admirers. Yet Ethan showed little interest in the attention from young socialites who now flocked to him, charmed by his success. Instead, he focused on bringing his creative ideas to life and continued expanding his business. One evening, as Ethan sat in his favorite chair, absorbed in a book, his phone rang. It was his business partner, Leo, a friend and close confidant. They were the same age and shared a bond that had grown over their years of collaboration. Together, they often enjoyed meals and planned future ventures, dreaming up new projects. Recently, however, Leo had met a woman named Isabel, and much of his free time now revolved around her. Ethan, however, didn't mind, as he respected Leo's happiness. "Ethan, we have a great opportunity here," Leo said without a preamble, as was his style. He rarely bothered with small talk, preferring to dive straight into the topic at hand. Leo's voice held excitement as he shared. "Ethan, we've caught the attention of a major international investor, Matteo Ricci. He's impressed with our hotel designs and wants to create something similar back in his country. Not only that, but he's fascinated by your creativity and hopes to work with us long-term to bring more unique concepts to life. If he's satisfied, there's no telling where this partnership could go. This is a huge opportunity, Ethan. We can't afford to pass it up." "Perfect," Ethan replied, feeling the thrill of a new project. "Did you tell him we're in?" Leo hesitated. "Well, there's a small complication," he began, clearing his throat. "I'm sure we can handle it," Ethan said, already considering solutions. "Here's the thing, Matteo has a fiancée and he's incredibly protective of her," Leo explained. Ethan raised his eyebrows, not expecting such a twist. He has a rather personal tradition. For his business dealings to go smoothly, Matteo insists on holding frequent social dinners, and every guest is expected to bring their own date. The preference? A fiancée, even a wife. Ethan laughed. "You mean we have to show up with a significant other for this deal to go through?" "That's right," Leo confirmed with a grin. "And actually, next week I'm planning to propose to Isabel. She'll come with me to these events." "Congratulations," Ethan said genuinely, though he couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy at his friend's newfound stability. He took pride in his single life, but knew that, for the sake of this business deal, he would have to play along. "Well," he added thoughtfully, "I'll have to find myself a fiancée by the weekend." Leo chuckled. "Matteo's assistant mentioned he imagines you with a dark-haired, blue-eyed partner. I told him you'd bring someone fitting that description." Ethan smirked, recalling Camilla briefly. "Dark-haired and blue-eyed, huh? Well, I suppose I can make that happen," he said, determined. The next morning, the first thing Ethan did was call his assistant Clara. Without any preamble, he said, "I need you to find me a fiancée." Clara was silent for a moment, no doubt questioning whether she'd heard him correctly. "Excuse me, Mr. Morales?" "Yes, you heard me right. I need you to find someone who can act as my fiancée by Saturday," Ethan clarified. Then, after a brief pause, he added, "She should be a dark-haired, blue-eyed woman, preferably someone who's not overly impressed by wealth. I don't want her to be in this for personal gain. She should be educated, well-spoken, and simply looking for a job. Can you manage that?" After another moment's silence, Clara replied hesitantly, I'll do my best, Mr. Morales, but this might be a bit challenging. Use every contact you have, Clara. I trust your imagination, he replied before ending the call. Later that afternoon, his phone pinged with a message from Leo. Mateo's dinner is set for Saturday at 7 p.m. at Magnolia on Central Avenue. Have you found your fiancée yet? Ethan replied quickly, work in progress. Leo messaged Ethan again to check on his progress. How's it going with the fiancée? He wrote. Ethan replied quickly, great, she's in the works. By Friday morning, his assistant Clara called with an update. I found a few candidates who meet your specifications. Would you like to meet them personally to make the final decision, Mr. Morales? Clara asked. Ethan knew he needed to see these candidates in person. He had to be sure that whoever he selected would be convincing in front of Mateo Ricci and his fiancée. I'll be in the office in an hour. Please arrange for the candidates to be there by then, he told Clara. Exactly 1 hour later, Ethan stepped out of the elevator on the 12th floor, feeling unexpectedly nervous. This was, after all, just business, not a date. As he entered the reception area, Clara informed him that the first candidate, Miss Gomez, was waiting in his office. Ethan entered and found a young woman with long, dark hair braided down her back, dressed in a conservative gray suit. Her blue eyes stood out against her calm expression, and he noted that Clara had done well in finding someone who met his physical requirements. He was curious to know more about her personality and conversation skills. Miss Gomez, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Ethan Morales, he said, offering his hand in a formal greeting. She stood and shook his hand, blushing slightly, which caught him off guard. I'll explain the situation, and then I'll ask you a few questions if you're ready, he said, feeling oddly flustered himself. She nodded, and they both took a seat as he laid out the details of the arrangement. She raised an eyebrow in brief surprise, then her face returned to its calm, neutral expression. Now, if you're interested, we'll proceed with a short interview, he continued. The young woman nodded again. She's unusually quiet, Ethan thought, but he continued, asking her about her background, education, and hobbies. Miss Gomez hesitated for several moments before responding, then finally launched into a long-winded reply. However, as she spoke, Ethan noticed she stuttered slightly, making her seem nervous and unsure. He listened patiently but grew concerned that she might not be confident enough for the role. After she finished speaking, Ethan thanked her and said he would be in touch. Miss Gomez left, and Ethan asked Clara to bring in the next candidate. This woman was certainly attractive, but her distant and cold demeanor was off-putting. The third candidate was beautiful as well, but her height made Ethan worry that they might look mismatched as a couple. The fourth woman struck him as too plain, and the fifth seemed naive and a little too giggly for the part. After meeting all the candidates, Ethan sighed in frustration. None of them felt right for the role he needed them to play. As he sat back in his chair, he wondered if he would even find a suitable fiancée by Saturday. Frustrated after spending so much time interviewing unsuitable candidates, Ethan headed out to a quiet restaurant for dinner. Despite his best efforts to relax, he couldn't shake the thought that he still desperately needed to find a stand-in fiancée. He scanned the restaurant as he ate, glancing around at the other diners, mentally sizing up potential candidates. However, the thought of approaching a stranger made him hesitate. If the press catches wind of this, I'll be a laughingstock, he thought. Even worse, if Mateo Ricci somehow discovered that Ethan's fiancée was merely a last-minute arrangement, the whole charade would collapse. With these troubling thoughts, Ethan finished his barely touched meal and returned home. He slept fitfully, and the next morning found him pacing back and forth, his mind racing with ideas. He could try more agencies, ask friends, or maybe just cancel his appearance altogether. As he stood contemplating, a message from Leo popped up on his phone. I hope you've secured a date for Saturday. Mateo's expecting us both. Ethan sighed, setting his phone aside without replying. If worst came to worst, he thought, he'd simply claim he was unwell and missed the dinner entirely. Deciding he needed a break, Ethan left his apartment for a morning walk. He parked near his favorite cafe and set off to enjoy the fresh air. As he walked toward the cafe, however, something else caught his eye: the old city library. A wave of nostalgia washed over him. It had been years since he'd last set foot in a library. His assistant usually ordered any book he wanted, but this week, with all the chaos around finding a fiancée, he had forgotten to send her his list. Drawn by the memory of quiet reading hours in his childhood, Ethan found himself walking toward the heavy library doors. Inside, he paused, savoring the familiar smell of paper and old wood. It's been too long, he thought as he wandered the aisles, scanning book spines with absent curiosity, temporarily forgetting about his troubles. Ethan was so absorbed in the rows of books that he didn't notice a young librarian approaching until she was standing just a few feet away. "Are you looking for anything specific?" she asked with a soft voice. Startled, Ethan turned to see a young woman with a kind smile, round glasses, and a name tag that read, Maya Santos. She was petite and elegant, with long dark hair that tumbled over her shoulders, bright blue eyes that sparkled with curiosity, and a charming, vintage style, a pleated skirt, quirky knee socks, and sturdy boots. For a moment, he forgot entirely why he had come to the library. He stammered, feeling oddly flustered under her gaze. She tilted her head, her smile growing a little wider as she patiently waited for him to find his words. "I was looking for some books," Ethan finally managed, feeling uncharacteristically unsure of himself. "Well, you're definitely in the right place," she teased, her eyes twinkling. "Any particular genre or author?" Realizing he hadn't actually planned to borrow anything, Ethan quickly glanced around the nearby shelves. "I enjoy philosophy," he replied, improvising. "Something reflective, I suppose." "Good choice," Maya said, a note of approval in her voice. She gestured for him to follow her and led him to a shelf filled with classic philosophical works. "Here you go, everything from Plato to modern thinkers." "Thank you," Ethan said, running his fingers over the spines of the books. But his mind was no longer on the bookshelves. He found himself glancing back at Maya, intrigued by her gentle manner and easy humor. An idea, bold and unexpected, began forming in his mind. Could she? The thought surprised even him. But as he looked at her, he realized she fit Leo's description perfectly. Dark hair, blue eyes, and an unassuming charm that made her unlike anyone he'd encountered in his social circles. Could this librarian, someone completely outside his usual world, possibly be the solution he was looking for? He turned back to her, hesitant but emboldened by a sense of urgency. "If I don't ask her, I'll be stuck without a date and miss the opportunity with Mateo," he thought. As Maya stacked some books nearby, he decided to take the chance. "Actually, Maya," he began slowly, choosing his words with care. "I have an unusual request. Would you consider having dinner with me tonight?" She looked up, her expression curious but cautious. "Dinner?" she repeated, clearly surprised. "Yes," he replied, trying to keep his tone casual. "It's a bit of a long story, but it's part of an important business event, and I could really use someone like you there with me." Maya studied him for a moment, then a hint of a smile appeared. "Well, that does sound interesting, but you'll have to tell me more about this business event before I say yes." Ethan smiled, feeling a surge of relief. Maybe, he thought, this plan just might work. "Well, you've certainly come to the right place. We have quite a selection," Maya joked with a warm smile, her tone playful. "Do you have any specific preferences?" Ethan could barely focus on the conversation. All his thoughts were consumed by the dinner with Mateo and how badly he needed a fiancée for the evening. He stole a glance at Maya, wondering nervously, what if I ask her to come with me? He felt a rush of nervous energy. He could practically see Leo's easy confidence in his mind. Leo wouldn't think twice, he'd just ask. But Ethan was different. For all his success, he found it difficult to connect with new people, even now as a wealthy businessman. After a long pause, he finally managed to speak. "I enjoy reading philosophy," he said a little unsteadily. "Perfect." Maya's eyes lit up. "Then follow me. I'll take you to where Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato are all waiting." With that, she turned and walked briskly through the aisles, and Ethan found himself struggling to keep up. How does she move so quickly in those heavy boots? He wondered, both impressed and amused. She led him to a section with a row of thick volumes and gestured toward them. "Here you go. Feel free to browse as long as you'd like," she said before heading back to her desk, leaving Ethan alone with his swirling thoughts. As he pretended to inspect the books, his mind raced. How was he going to ask her? It's just one dinner, he told himself. trying to summon courage. Worst case, she says no. Finally, he picked a random book off the shelf, took a deep breath, and walked over to where she was seated. Oh, Cicero, great choice, Maya beamed at him. Are you already registered here? Ethan shook his head. No, I'll need to sign up. All right, she said, reaching for a registration form. I'll just need your ID. Ethan handed over his driver's license but lingered, watching her with a serious expression. Sensing his gaze, she looked up, a bit surprised. Is there something else I can help you with? She asked, puzzled. Actually, yes. I need a little assistance, Ethan replied, fumbling with his words. Oh? Maya tilted her head, listening attentively. It's not the usual kind of request, he admitted, feeling his cheeks warm slightly. I'd like to invite you to a dinner. Her eyebrows shot up. A dinner? Yes, but it's not a date, he quickly clarified, worried she might get the wrong idea. Maya laughed lightly, obviously entertained by his awkwardness. All right, if it's not a date, then what is it? Are you asking me to read philosophy aloud over pasta? He couldn't help but chuckle, relieved by her lightheartedness. No, it's a business dinner, he explained. All of the attendees will be bringing their significant others, and, well, I don't currently have one. Maya nodded slowly, beginning to piece together the situation. Ah, I see, so you need someone to help make the right impression, and you're short on time. Exactly. He exhaled in relief, grateful she understood so quickly. She thought for a moment, then asked, And when is this dinner? Tonight, he replied, his heart skipping as he waited for her answer. He silently hoped she wouldn't be busy, but he braced himself for disappointment. A small smile formed on her lips. Well, as it happens, I'm completely free this evening. Ethan couldn't hide his excitement. That's fantastic, he said, beaming. He hesitated, glancing over her outfit, then awkwardly added, do you have an evening dress? She finished for him, reading his mind again. Ethan exhaled, laughing slightly. Yes, that. Do you? Maya looked thoughtful for a moment, then gave a reassuring nod. I think I can manage something suitable, she said confidently. If you need to buy anything, I'll cover the expenses, Ethan quickly offered, handing her his business card. Just let me know how much, and I'll transfer it to you. Maya took the card, glancing at it with a raised eyebrow. She seemed amused, but before she could respond, Ethan's phone rang. It was Leo, and Ethan stepped aside to take the call. So have you found someone for the dinner yet? Leo asked without preamble. Yes, I'll be there with a date, Ethan replied softly, glancing over at Maya, who was already filling out his library registration. Good, don't be late, Leo warned before hanging up. Ethan returned to Maya, who handed him the completed form. For a moment he noticed a slight change in her expression, something thoughtful and almost reserved, but she quickly smiled. So, we'll meet at the restaurant? Or do you need a ride? He asked. I'll take a cab, she replied. Just text me the address and the time. Ethan nodded, entering her number into his phone. As he turned to leave, he felt a strange mixture of excitement and relief. It wasn't exactly what he had planned, but something told him that, with Maya by his side, he might just pull off the evening ahead. Ethan handed Maya his business card, adding quickly, If you need to buy something, just send me the amount, and I'll cover it. Maya took the card, glancing down at it, but Ethan missed the sudden change in her expression as his phone rang. It was Leo calling. Stepping away toward the bookshelves, Ethan answered, Hey, Leo. Well, did you find a date? Leo asked eagerly. Yes, everything's set, Ethan replied in a low voice, glancing back at Maya, who seemed busy filling out his library form. Why are you whispering? Leo sounded amused. I'm in the library, Ethan said, rolling his eyes, and ended the call quickly before Leo could reply. Returning to Maya, he found her with the completed registration form, holding it out for his signature. Her smile was gone, replaced by a more serious, almost distant look. It seemed like something had changed. So we'll meet at the restaurant later? Ethan asked, wondering if he should offer her a ride. No need, Maya replied, her tone polite but reserved. I'll just take a taxi. Here's my number, if you want to send the address and time. Ethan nodded and carefully entered the number she dictated into his phone. He took the book he'd borrowed from the table and turned to leave. As he walked away, he couldn't shake a strange feeling. Something felt off. Maya's warmth had faded, replaced by a coolness he didn't quite understand. What had changed? Shrugging it off, he reminded himself that the arrangement was purely practical. He had his stand-in date, and he was all set for the evening. It's probably nothing, he thought, brushing away his unease. Satisfied that everything was in place, Ethan decided to focus on preparing for the dinner. He finally headed to his favorite cafe for breakfast, then called his stylist to set up an appointment. Closer to noon, he received a message from Maya with a picture of a stunning red dress. He had to admit it was perfect for the evening. But when he glanced at the price, he stifled a cough. The dress was shockingly expensive. Despite his wealth, Ethan was careful with money, a habit born from his modest upbringing. His usual routine included simple cafes, basic clothes, and a grounded lifestyle. Luxury was something he reserved for special occasions or business appearances. But tonight is a special case, he reminded himself, and promptly transferred the amount to her account. Later that day, Maya informed him she'd purchased matching shoes and a handbag. Ethan smirked, noting that she seemed to be taking the role seriously. "This girl is thorough," he muttered to himself, with a hint of admiration. At exactly 7 p.m., Ethan pulled up in his car outside the Magnolia restaurant, parking near the entrance. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in a nearby shop window. He looked sharp in his tailored suit, white shirt, and a subtly patterned tie. Adjusting his watch, he took a steadying breath. Everything was in place, and he was as ready as he'd ever be. Tonight wasn't just about a dinner. It was a crucial opportunity, and he'd have to make the best possible impression. Ethan stepped out of his car in front of Magnolia Restaurant, giving himself a final once-over in the reflection of a brightly lit storefront window. Dressed in a light suit, crisp white shirt, and polished leather shoes, he adjusted the watch on his wrist, making sure every detail was perfect. Tonight mattered more than he cared to admit. Inside the restaurant, Leo and his girlfriend Isabel were already seated, waiting for him. Isabel looked radiant in a deep green velvet dress, with an open neckline and a string of pearls that perfectly framed her collarbone. Her reddish-brown hair was styled elegantly at the nape, with loose curls framing her face. "Hey everyone," Ethan greeted with a smile, taking in his friend's warm appearance. "Ethan," Leo greeted, standing to shake his hand. "Looking sharp, but where's your date?" "She's on her way, should be here any minute," Ethan replied as he took a seat next to Leo. Leo nodded, then gestured to the empty seats at the table. "Mateo and his fiancée are on their way too. They hit a bit of traffic coming into the city but should be here in a few minutes." Ethan took out his phone and sent a quick message to Maya. "Are you on your way?" Her response came almost instantly. "Yes, 5 minutes away." "Great," he replied, putting his phone down, feeling a little more at ease now that everything was in motion. Leo murmured something to Isabel, and then turned back to Ethan. "Listen, man," Leo began, his voice a bit more serious. "Our business dealings have always been straightforward, right? No loose ends or anything shady?" "As far as I know, yes," Ethan answered, surprised. "Why bring it up now?" Leo drummed his fingers nervously on the table. "Well, I've heard that Mateo is extremely particular about honesty and transparency. If there's anything even remotely questionable in our background, he'll walk away from the deal. It's just how he operates." Ethan thought back over their business ventures. "I've always ensured everything was above board, so unless there's something you haven't mentioned—" Leo nodded, his expression relaxing slightly. "Good, that's what I thought. I'm just a little on edge tonight," he chuckled, adding, "unless, of course, your fiancée decides not to show up." Ethan gave a faint smile but wasn't in the mood for jokes. He glanced around the restaurant and noticed a couple slowly approaching their table. He recognized the man from photos, Matteo Ricci, a well-known businessman with an impeccable reputation. Matteo was tall, in his 50s, with a bald head that gleamed under the lights and a tailored checkered suit that fit him perfectly. He exuded confidence, his stride purposeful as he led his fiancée toward the table. But Ethan's heart skipped when he saw the woman with him. She was tall, with striking blonde hair and large, expressive eyes framed by long lashes. Her slim figure was draped in a sleek blue silk dress, accented with silver jewelry that complemented her light gray eyes. There was no mistaking her. Mateo's companion was none other than Camilla, the same woman who had once broken Ethan's heart during his university days. As the couple approached, Ethan felt a rush of memories he had thought long buried. It all made sense now. The reason Matteo was so intensely protective of his fiancée. Camilla had always had a way of captivating attention and leaving heartbreak in her wake. Ethan's mind reeled, but he forced himself to stay composed. The men stood to greet Matteo and his companion, with Ethan gathering his thoughts, his mind split between maintaining professionalism and processing the shock of seeing Camilla again after all these years. Camilla gave Ethan a slow, languid look as she extended her hand for a greeting. He shook it with a touch of irony, wondering if she even remembered him, given her indifferent expression. "It's all in the past," he reminded himself, feeling a strange mixture of relief and detachment. Matteo, meanwhile, smiled warmly and greeted everyone with genuine enthusiasm. "Wonderful to see you all here in this beautiful setting," Matteo said, nodding to each person. "Leo, Isabel, Ethan. Ethan, where's your fiancée? Leo mentioned you'd be bringing a beautiful blue-eyed companion tonight." Ethan froze, his mind scrambling for an answer. Seeing Camilla had left him so rattled that he'd momentarily forgotten about Maya. Just as he was about to explain, a soft voice spoke up. "The blue-eyed angel has already arrived," the voice said calmly. Everyone turned, and there stood Maya at the edge of the table. She wore a simple dark blue dress, complemented by understated black shoes and a pair of long, gleaming earrings. Her hair was neatly pinned in a low bun, highlighting her delicate features. Despite the simplicity of her outfit, she looked stunning, and Ethan felt a swell of relief as he stood to greet her. But his relief was tinged with confusion. Why hadn't she worn the vibrant red dress she'd sent a photo of? Ignoring his curiosity, he slipped an arm around her waist and introduced her confidently. "This is Maya, my fiancée." Maya greeted everyone with a composed smile. Matteo's approving nod was immediate. "Lovely, and so refreshingly unpretentious," he said warmly. Maya returned his gaze with quiet dignity. "I'm not really used to extravagant things," Maya replied with a polite smile. "Admirable," Matteo responded with a grin. Ethan chuckled awkwardly, still puzzled by Maya's reserved demeanor. Yet he had no choice but to go along with it, unsure of her intentions but willing to play along. The waiter arrived to take their orders, and Camilla, with her characteristic flair, requested shrimp and champagne, a choice Matteo matched. Leo and Isabel placed their orders as well. When the waiter turned to Maya, she replied simply, "I'll have plain rice." Matteo chuckled in surprise. "Plain rice? Ethan, you're not letting your friend indulge?" he teased. Ethan blushed, caught off guard. No, of course not," he stammered, casting a glance at Camilla, who was watching him with a faint smirk. He was at a loss for words. Maya calmly stepped in, saying, "Ethan has nothing to do with it. I simply like to keep a light diet, especially after 6. Her regal tone diffused the awkwardness, and Matteo laughed heartily. "I like this one," Matteo exclaimed, clearly amused. Leo joined in his laughter, and soon the others followed, though Ethan noted Camilla's slightly patronizing look as she observed Maya. "She's just a girl," Camilla said lightly, her tone dismissive. Ethan felt a pang of irritation at her condescension, but Maya remained unfazed. With the main orders placed, the waiter brought out a selection of appetizers and drinks. Conversation turned naturally toward business, and the men delved into discussions of their recent projects. The women listened, though they didn't join in. Finally, as the conversation drifted to more personal topics, Camilla turned her attention to Maya. "So," Camilla asked with a slight edge, "when are you and Ethan planning the wedding?" Maya gave a gentle shake of her head. "We haven't set a date yet," she replied, her voice calm and composed. Ethan was grateful for her grace, marveling at her ability to hold her own amidst the subtle tension around the table. Maya's calm strength and understated elegance were not what he'd expected, but he realized that tonight he was glad she was by his side. Camilla raised her brows and asked, "But why haven't you set a date?" Ethan quickly answered for Maya, "We're not in a hurry." Camilla smirked and commented slyly, "Yes, Ethan has always been a bit slow with decisions." She then gave him a knowing wink, which surprised Matteo, who turned to her with a questioning look. "How do you know that?" he asked, a hint of suspicion in his tone. "My sister went to university with him," Camilla lied smoothly. Ethan felt a chill as he realized Camilla hadn't changed a bit. She still had that way of twisting situations to suit herself, and he remained silent, allowing the conversation to shift back to Leo and Isabel. Soon, the food arrived, filling the air with delicious aromas. The waiter placed a modest plate of plain rice in front of Maya, who began eating quietly. Mateo observed her with approval, charmed by her modesty. Ethan noticed Mateo's admiration of Leo, whose easy charisma had clearly won over their potential partner. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Mateo was casting occasional wary glances his way, likely because of Camilla's ambiguous behavior toward him. Maya noticed the tension but chose to stay quiet. Finally, the conversation turned to the proposed joint project, and Ethan and Leo took turns explaining their work approach, sharing innovative ideas and describing their commitment to quality. Mateo nodded, impressed. "This sounds promising, gentlemen. I'm almost ready to finalize our agreement," he said, and Ethan and Leo exchanged triumphant smiles. But Mateo's tone grew serious as he added, "However, my reputation is everything. I can only collaborate with partners who are entirely above board. Can you assure me that your company operates with complete integrity?" Leo hastily nodded. "Absolutely, Mateo, we guarantee it." Mateo's eyes shifted to Ethan, who affirmed, "We've never conducted business dishonestly." Just then Camilla interjected with a mocking smile. "Such little angels." Mateo was about to respond, but suddenly Maya rose from her seat, her expression icy and resolved. Ethan looked up, concerned. "Maya, is everything all right?" Maya's eyes bore into him, sharp and unyielding. "Are you certain you've been honest in all your dealings, Ethan?" she asked, her tone laced with anger. Ethan's face went pale as he stammered, What are you talking about?" The room fell into a tense silence. Maya's voice rang out clearly. "I'm referring to an incident from a few years ago when your company found a prime location in the city for a new project. There was one small problem. A house, my family's home, stood in the way, and rather than negotiate, you simply had it demolished." A deadly silence settled over the table. Mateo's face hardened as he looked at Ethan with a mixture of disappointment and suspicion. "Is this true, Mr. Morales?" he asked sternly. Ethan felt his heart pounding. His face flushed. I don't know anything about this," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "That's a lie," Maya spat, her voice thick with emotion. "You're the head of the company. You must know what goes on within it." "I really don't know anything about this," Ethan insisted, his voice desperate as he met Maya's piercing gaze. "I always made sure to personally review every location before any construction began." "You're lying," Maya shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes, and before anyone could react, she grabbed her purse and rushed from the table. Instinctively, Ethan moved to follow her, but Leo caught his sleeve, holding him back. "Wait, Ethan," Leo said quietly. Ethan stopped, turning to face his friend with a confused, searching expression. "I swear, I don't know anything about her family's house being torn down," he repeated, hoping for an explanation. But to Ethan's shock, Leo looked down, a hint of guilt clouding his face. "I do," Leo admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "What?" Ethan whispered, disbelief written across his face. "It was 4 years ago," Leo began. "You were on a short leave at the time because your mother was ill. I managed the project on my own. There was a small house on the site we wanted, and when I tried to buy it, the owner refused. I arranged with local authorities to speed things up. The police gave the family 3 days to leave." Leo's face flushed with regret as he continued. "The man wanted to take us to court, but our lawyers convinced him otherwise. We transferred a settlement to cover the cost of a new home, and I forgot about it." Ethan stared at Leo, horrified. "You did all this? And behind my back? I trusted you completely." Leo's head hung low. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't think it would come back to haunt us like this." Across the table, Mateo had watched the exchange with growing disappointment. He began clapping slowly, almost mockingly. "What a performance, gentlemen. Business partners revealing their dirty secrets." Standing up, he helped Camilla to her feet. "Thank you for an unforgettable evening, but I think it's time for us to leave," Mateo announced coldly. Without another word, Mateo and Camilla exited the restaurant, with their heads held high, the strained silence in their wake making it clear that the deal was as good as dead. After they left, Leo sighed heavily. "Well, that went worse than expected." Isabel placed a sympathetic hand on his, but Ethan wasn't in the mood for comfort. "Leo, this is no joke," Ethan said sternly. "I'm not sure I can keep working with you after this." With that, Ethan rose, collected his things and left the restaurant. As he walked toward his car, he sensed someone watching him. Looking up, he saw Camilla gazing at him from the back window of Matteo's car as it pulled out of the parking lot. Ethan simply shook his head and turned away, his mind racing. Once in his car, he took out his phone and texted Maya, "I'm truly sorry. I didn't know about your family's home." Leo only just confessed to his actions. Maya's reply was almost instant, "I don't believe you." Ethan sat in silence, his heart heavy. Unable to sleep that night, he wrestled with everything that had happened until he finally resolved to see Maya the next day and explain himself in person. Waking early, he got dressed and went for a walk, trying to clear his mind. By the time the library was due to open, he was already waiting outside. Finally, he saw Maya walking toward the entrance, her head lowered, lost in thought. She wore a simple green skirt and a white blouse, her face clouded with sadness. Gathering his courage, Ethan stepped forward to speak to her, hoping to clear the air once and for all. Maya walked toward the library, wearing a simple white polo, green skirt, and her usual sturdy boots, her hair loose except for a small green bow. Lost in thought, she didn't notice Ethan waiting for her until he stepped in front of her path. Surprised, she looked at him coolly. "What are you doing here? I thought we'd said everything that needed saying yesterday." Ethan tried to reach for her hand, but Maya pulled back. "I'm here to apologize, Maya. I really didn't know about your family's home," he said earnestly. Maya stared at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, "It doesn't matter anymore," and moved to walk past him. But Ethan stepped in her way again. "Please, let me make things right," he insisted. "You already tried," she replied curtly. "I donated the money you sent for the dress and shoes to my parents. I have no need for it." Ethan nodded, finally understanding why she had worn her regular clothes instead of the glamorous red dress. But something inside him resisted the idea of letting her go so easily. Though the business deal had fallen apart and he no longer needed a fiancée, he couldn't bear the thought of never seeing Maya again. "Maya, I don't want you to hold a grudge against me," he pleaded. "I'm not holding a grudge," she answered, her tone dry and final. "Then prove it," Ethan said with a faint smile. "Let me take you to dinner." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Another dinner?" "Yes," he said, managing to take her hand this time. "But just us, and this time it'll be a real date." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "Why would a successful businessman want to take an ordinary librarian like me on a date?" Ethan leaned close, lowering his voice. "Maybe because he simply likes her." A hint of a smile played on her lips. "All right," she replied, her tone softening. "I'll give you one more chance." With a final smile, she slipped away from his grasp and disappeared behind the library doors. Ethan felt a rush of excitement and relief as he left to prepare for their evening. Later, back at his office, Ethan made a reservation at an elegant restaurant and ordered a bouquet of roses to be delivered to the library. Just as he was finishing his preparations, Leo appeared, his face shadowed with regret. "Ethan, I'm sorry," Leo said quietly. "I realize now how much damage I caused. Not just to the company, but to our friendship. I'll never make a decision like that without you again. Please forgive me." Ethan regarded him sternly. "I'm glad you understand, Leo, because if you hadn't, I'd have thought you'd lost your mind." "I'll do whatever it takes to make up for it," Leo said earnestly. Ethan nodded, not entirely ready to forgive, but willing to consider it. Once Leo left, Ethan received a surprising message from an unknown number. "You've become quite impressive, Ethan. I'd love to see you," it read, signed by Camilla. At any other time, such a message might have thrilled him. But now, thinking of Maya's gentle blue eyes, he typed a brief response. "I don't think Matteo would appreciate that." With a firm resolve, he blocked Camilla's number and turned his attention back to the evening ahead. At exactly 7 p.m., Ethan arrived at the library, his heart racing. When Maya emerged, he didn't recognize her at first. She wore a stunning long golden dress and high heels, her hair elegantly styled. In that moment, Ethan realized how deeply grateful he was for a second chance. Maya's hair was elegantly curled and pinned up. When did she find the time? Ethan wondered, admiring her transformation. "You look incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine awe. Thanks for the roses, Maya replied with a smile, looping her arm through his. Together, they walked to his car, and Ethan drove them to a small, intimate restaurant lined with shelves of books, a perfect touch for two book lovers. The evening unfolded quietly, the two of them sharing stories from their childhoods, laughing over favorite hobbies, and discovering a mutual love for the same authors. By the end of the night, Ethan was completely captivated, and Maya finally believed he'd had nothing to do with her family's eviction. After that night, Ethan and Maya began seeing each other almost daily, quickly realizing how deeply they cared for one another. In time, they fell in love, and Ethan soon proposed. A few months later, they married and embarked on a honeymoon inspired by their shared passion for literature. They traveled to places where famous authors had once lived, visiting towns and homes that had inspired great stories. The trip brought them even closer, helping them understand and cherish each other with all their strengths and flaws. When they returned, Maya moved into Ethan's apartment, and their evenings became filled with cozy moments spent reading side by side, sharing quiet conversations, and simply enjoying each other's company. Their days were filled with warmth and happiness. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed this story, please like and leave a comment. Thank you for your support.